Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Here we go. We're going to tune in for question period, October 3rd. It's a big day. I think there might be a new speaker in the House. I can hear them in the background getting ready to go. It's going to be an exciting day. Hopefully Trudeau, POILIEVE, everybody, all the players are going to be there. Let's maybe tune in.
Colleagues, before we begin, my first question period. Please treat me like that
Got a new speaker in the House.
On the first day.
Don't dent that car. He's a comedian.
Questions orales.
Questions orales. Let's go, guys. Let's go.
The opposition.
Yeah, let's go.
We'll keep the car on the right side of the road, Mr. Speaker. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, we see the cost of living going up. The National Payroll Institute has indicated that 63% are spending all their paychecks, and 30% of Canadians are spending more than their pay every month. This is a national emergency. Will the government finally refund the taxes they've charged so that Canadians can keep their homes and feed
Everybody's
themselves?
Poor.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. We hear
Here we go.
the
Justin's in the
concerns
house.
of Canadians, and we are taking action. This is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that thousands of new homes are built thanks to our scrapping of the GST on new construction. We're creating thousands of good jobs for the middle class, and we're taking care of the environment with projects like the Northvolt factory in Quebec. We're also taking action to stabilize grocery prices, and we will continue to work every day to make Canadians' lives more affordable. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
All right, here we're back to
This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. He has increased taxes and inflationary deficits that are causing food prices to rise. And last month, he announced amid great fanfare that he was going to take action by Thanksgiving to bring down prices. But now we're realizing that it can cost up to $100 for a turkey. Will he reduce the cost of turkey before Thanksgiving?
All right. Who can afford
6 days?
Who can afford a turkey?
Prime Minister.
I bet you the Prime Minister can afford a turkey.
Weeks ago, our Minister of Innovation brought together the CEOs of the major grocery chains to talk about how we're going to stabilize food prices for Canadians. This is work that we will keep working on to make sure that Canadians can afford groceries this weekend and for all weekends to come. At the same time, we're taking steps like we did with the grocery rebate, like we did with childcare subsidies.
Is that working for you?
And we will always be there to help make life more affordable for Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the
Is that working for you?
Is not worth the cost. According to the National Payroll Institute, there is a, quote, financial storm gathering. They also describe it as a national emergency, as 63% of Canadians are spending their entire paycheck, and 30%, are spending more than their paycheck, forced to eat up their savings or go into debt. Will the Prime Minister reverse his inflationary debt and taxes so that Canadians can eat, heat, and house themselves?
It'd be nice to be independent.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
So we shouldn't be
Straighten out that
investing to
tie.
have Canadians' backs through the pandemic, that we shouldn't be there for families, and they continue to say we shouldn't be sending low and middle income Canadians support to send their kids to the dentist. We're going to continue to be there for Canadians because we know people are facing challenging times because of the global context. That's why we're building thousands more homes by cutting the GST on construction of new apartments. We're creating thousands of good middle class jobs and cleaning our environment with projects like Northvolt in Quebec, and we're making life more affordable for Canadians by working to stabilize grocery prices and having delivered the grocery rebate. We've got lots more to do, and we're going to keep doing it for Canadians.
Here, here.
You need a list to wrap that off? You need a piece of paper.
He's doing, Mr. Speaker. In fact, he talks about grocery prices. A month ago, he held a big photo op where he claimed that he would stabilize grocery prices before Thanksgiving. Well, the news is out that a Thanksgiving turkey now costs as much as $100. for one. Wow. Mr. Speaker, it is now 6 days until Thanksgiving. Will the Prime Minister promise to bring the price of turkey back down to normal levels before people eat the turkey on Monday?
Before people eat the turkey on Monday, there's not a lot of time left.
I would like to remind members to please wait until the speakers recognize them before starting your answer or asking a question. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The new speaker's laying down the law.
A number of weeks ago, our Minister of Industry brought together the heads of all the large grocery chains in Canada to address directly the challenges that Canadians facing around high food prices. It is not right that Canadians be as squeezed as they are right now, and that's why we're taking action. We continue to also take action on investing in housing as Canadians need more and more supply, which is why we've eliminated the GST on new rental construction, why we've incentivized communities to move forward on greater densification. We're continuing to respond to the needs of Canadians.
It doesn't feel like they're responding to me, though. I have needs.
That wasn't his promise. His promise wasn't to have meetings and to read off talking points. His promise was an affordable Thanksgiving. Well, Thanksgiving is now 6 days away, and turkeys are going for $120, Mr. Speaker. $120 at some outlets. Canadians cannot afford to eat, heat, or house themselves. So can he tell us, given that it was his promise to create an affordable Thanksgiving dinner, how much will that dinner cost an average family of 4 this Monday? How much?
Good question. Are we going to get an answer? Think there's going to be an answer?
Mr. Speaker, as we've seen consistently, Canadians are facing real challenges. That is why we have consistently stepped up with measures to support Canadians, whether it's bringing in a reduction of 50% on childcare, which Conservatives campaigned against, that has saved thousands of dollars a year to many families, whether it's moving forward with a grocery rebate, whether it's moving forward with dental benefits for low-income and middle-income families that can't offer those to their kids. These are things that Conservatives voted against. We will continue to be there. We're working with the large grocery companies to increase competition and stabilize food prices.
I don't think anybody's buying what you're selling.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie.
Who do we got?
Mr. Speaker,
Parliamentarian.
Statistics Canada revealed last week that there were nearly 500,000 non-permanent residents in Quebec in July, an increase of more than 150,000 over a year ago. This increase is Ottawa's responsibility. We may be the most welcoming people in the world in Quebec, the most open to immigration, but at some point you've got to face facts. We just can't handle 500,000 non-permanent residents. Public services can't keep up. Will the government finally revisit its targets sensibly so we can settle these people properly?
That's an immigration
Prime
problem.
Minister.
That's a lot of people.
Mr. Speaker, we know full well that immigration is essential to help businesses find workers they need, but also to grow our economy. We will continue to strengthen our system
Look,
for
I
the
can
sake of
read.
communities all across the country, including Francophone communities. This is good not only for our economy, but also for the future of our communities. We will continue to work with the Government of Quebec to ensure that we can resettle people here and get them to work and make the country more prosperous for everyone. The Honourable Member for La Prairie.
Right.
Mr. Speaker, the Quebec Immigration Minister, Christine Fréchette, has called on the federal government to wake up. She says these numbers are a game changer. Mr. Speaker, Quebec controls its permanent immigration, not its temporary immigration. That's up to the federal government. With 500,000 non-permanent residents in Quebec alone, the pressure is getting to be too much for our education system and our capacity to enculturate and house people. Will the government lower its targets? The Right Honourable Prime
guys.
Minister.
Subscribe,
Mr.
like,
Speaker,
share the channel.
I would recommend to my friend that he listen a bit more, listen to what businesses and universities and communities are saying all across Quebec. They need workers. They want to bring people in from all around the world, and they want to enculturate them and foster their success. We will continue to work hand in hand with the Government of Quebec to create a more prosperous future for all Quebecers and all Canadians.
No paper that time,
The
so
Honourable Member from
pause for that.
Vancouver East.
Canadians are struggling to keep a roof over their heads. Whether
Go,
you're
Jenny.
a senior being rental evicted, someone who is unhoused in an encampment, or a young family dreaming of owning their own home. The Liberals claim they want to see more affordable homes built faster. Yet it is the Liberals who have rejected offers of municipal land and provincial and territorial money from British Columbia and Nunavut to build homes. So talk is cheap. Empty promises won't house people. Will the Prime Minister commit to funding these projects to build homes family desperately need?
Jenny Kwan's all fired up.
Le très honorable
Get 'em,
Premier
girl.
ministre.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that recently, alongside
Yeah.
British Columbia and the City of
good reader.
Vancouver, the member for Vancouver Centre announced the groundbreaking for the construction of 154 new affordable housing units close to transit. This new building in the heart of Davie Village will also house Community, a non-profit org providing access to safe and secure services for individuals and families living with HIV/AIDS. This is what we can accomplish when we work together, ensuring Vancouverites can live close to where they work and access the services they need.
The honourable member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. That's another completely out of touch answer, Mr. Speaker. Families renewing their mortgages in the next few
sorry,
months
guys.
are heading straight for a wall. Liberal and Conservative inaction has resulted in the loss of over 1 million affordable housing units. And all the while, the government is giving the Bank of Canada the power to raise interest rates without worrying about the impact on people. That's the Liberal record. Families who can't even afford their own homes. It just doesn't make sense. Why hasn't the Prime Minister given the Bank of Canada a clearer mandate to avoid this crisis?
Le très
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, here on this side of the House, we will always respect the independence of the Bank of Canada, but we know that Canadians are grappling with the cost of housing, and that's why we've taken action on a number of fronts. We
Inaction.
eliminated the GST on new construction. More and more houses will be built more quickly by cooperating with the municipalities, and we're helping Canadians save on the purchase of a new home with a tax-free savings account for first home buyers. We would encourage all our partners to take bolder action to make housing more affordable.
Thornhill.
Christina Freeland shows up today too. See this?
Historic lows. That was the Prime
Here we
Minister
go. Well, it's
just
the
3
last
years
one, the
ago.
fire
He
plug.
told people to keep borrowing while
Spark
his
plug.
government kept spending. Now, the number of Canadians saying they're facing financial stress has jumped 20% in a single year. The National Payroll Institute found that 63% of working Canadians said they had nothing left at the end of the month, and 30% spend more than they make. They are calling it a national emergency. So when will they finally
Is it all
balance the
true?
budget so interest rates can come down and Canadians can keep more of their own money?
Good question.
Honorable ministre.
Who's keeping their money? Are you? How are you?
Mr.
Oh,
Speaker,
no.
in
Here
my
we go.
first answer, let me just congratulate you in this historic role, historic for Canada.
It's gratuitous, man.
Mr. Speaker, while the
You had a chance
Conservatives
probably to do
recite
this,
trite and misleading talking points, our government
Trite.
is acting for Canadians. With Bill C-56, we are getting more homes built by lifting the GST on purpose-built rental, and we are acting to stabilize grocery prices with historic changes to competition law that will bring competition to the grocery sector.
How can she be so confident when times
This
are
is
so
the minister
bad?
who
in their-
misled
Yeah,
Canadians
come on.
when she said that interest rates would stay low for a long time. And now homeowners are bracing for the shock of when they have to renew their mortgages. That's what the Canadian
exact
banks are saying.
situation.
And now there's another former bank governor raising alarm bells. David Dodge warns that the burden of past debts are catching up. Governments cannot spend their way out of the problems that she created. When the government spends money, the bank raises the interest rates. And when the rates go up, Canadians pay more for their mortgages. So will the NDP Liberal government finally listen to everyone or anyone, stop their spending so that Canadians can keep their homes?
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Good
question. What about it? Keep our homes, right?
Mr. Speaker, the only people misleading Canadians are the Conservatives on that side of the House. The reality is Canada has the lowest deficit in the G7 and the lowest debt to GDP ratio. And,
Isn't that good,
Mr.
though?
Speaker, our AAA rating has recently been reaffirmed by DBRS Morningstar. These are independent experts, Mr. Speaker, not conservative partisans. We know we need to get more homes built. That's why we've lifted the GST on purpose-built rental and added another $20 billion to the financing CMHC has available for rental construction.
Interesting.
Honorable député de Calgary Forest Lawn.
Canadians shouldn't have believed this finance minister when she
This
said,
guy's
borrow
hot.
as much as you
This
want.
guy's great.
Interest rates will be low for a very long time. Because she turned around and threw hundreds of billions of dollars of fuel on the inflationary fire, giving Canadians the worst inflation in 40 years and the most rapid interest rate hikes not seen in the last 30 years. Anyone who took out a mortgage 5 years ago at 2% will now have to renew at 6 or 7%. That's an increase of more than 200%. Will this Prime Minister rein in his inflationary deficits so interest rates come down, or does he want people to start losing their homes?
Here, here.
That out there, man. That guy's good. I like that guy. He speaks well.
Mr. Speaker, yet again,
Lemon face.
misleading comments from the Conservatives. The reality is Canada's AAA rating has been reaffirmed year after year that we have been in government. We have the lowest deficit in the G7 and the lowest
said
debt to GDP ratio. We also know we are a growing country, and a growing country needs to build more homes faster. That is exactly what we are doing by lifting the GST on purpose-built rental, by making more financing available through CMHC, $200 billion for $20 billion for financing of new rental construction.
Does any of that make
Député
sense
de
to you?
Calgary Forest Lawn.
The rating she
How's that
brags
gonna
about came
make
at the
it
high
better
cost
for
of 1 in
interest
5
rates?
Canadians skipping meals and 7 million Canadians visiting a food bank in a single month. She's completely out of touch, but in line with her incompetent government's legacy.
Good.
This
Good.
finance minister was in
What?
victory laps 2 months ago, saying that she stopped inflation. It went up 43% since then.
Is that
What did she
true?
think was going to happen when she added $1.2 billion of debt in the first quarter of this fiscal year alone? Will the Prime Minister rein in his inflationary spending, or does he think that too is not one of his responsibilities?
Oh, this guy's pretty sharp, right? We like him. Yeah.
Honorable
speaks well.
ministre des Finances et vice-premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are hitting new lows in this question.
I just had some
Not
lemonade.
only are they misleading, they are internally contradictory and incomprehensible. I think the member opposite just said that our AAA rating is disadvantageous to hardworking Canadians. I beg to differ, Mr. Speaker. Our AAA rating is a foundation for everything our government is doing to build more homes, to provide more support to hardworking Canadian middle-class families, Mr. Speaker. Time for the Conservatives to get that.
I got a quick question. Who do you think gave Freeland the pearl necklace? Trudeau?
Mr. Speaker, according to a recent survey by the National Payroll
guy's pretty
Institute,
great
nearly
too, man,
2 out
for-
of 3 workers
Oh, I thought it was
spend their
blocked.
entire take-home pay, and 30% are spending more than that. But we can help them by rejecting the second carbon tax, a tax that applies in Quebec and is supported by the Bloc. People are suffering and having trouble putting food on the table. It's a serious situation. Will the Prime Minister revisit his commitment to raise the carbon tax radically as the Bloc would have
Good
it?
theater, man. Andrew Scheer's in the house. You might have
The
something to
Honourable Minister.
contribute a little bit.
Mr. Speaker,
Like Stephen Gabal,
I'd like to
too.
remind my honourable colleague that during the last election campaign,
This guy's all right.
his party and those elected
Needs a
in his
haircut.
party campaigned in favor of a price on pollution. They just talk and we take action. That's the difference. And those taxes will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and those reductions will also generate investments of over $2 billion all across the country. That's the difference between us and them, Mr. Speaker.
Us and them.
Honorable
The honourable member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, when you talk about out of touch, that's what we're talking about. This minister is completely out of touch with what life is like for people who are going to food banks. Food banks are overwhelmed. People can't get enough to eat. There are families in Montreal in his riding that have been turned away by the food banks because they didn't have enough food to provide. And unfortunately, this government and the Bloc supported the government in increasing the carbon tax. Will this government put aside its ideology and, for once, and help people in need? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, what's out of touch in 2023 is a party that aspires to form government and doesn't have any policy on climate change. The official position of that party today is to deny the very existence of climate change. And yet this summer there were hundreds of people displaced all over the country, sometimes not just once or twice, but 3 times because of record forest fires. There have been incredible floods all across the country, and the Conservatives have nothing to say about climate change.
There's been a lot of flooding. There's no doubt, a lot of flooding.
Before I give the floor to the next honourable member, I'd just like to remind members that there's just one conversation at a time, and that's very important. Thank you. The honourable
Greg
member
Fergus thinks he's
for
going to change the
Beauport,
rules.
Limoilou.
Got some news for you, Greg.
Mr. Speaker, $117,000 worth of dry cleaning for the Governor General since 2018.
His earrings
Her
are good.
laundry must be pretty darn clean. $117,000 on top of $2.7 million in travel, $71,000 in limousine rides. Royal expenses. At the rate she's spending, Mr. Speaker,
it's embarrassing.
It's only the cleaning that's running dry, because she's certainly not short of cash. With a salary of $350K and an in-house cleaning service, she should be able to pay the difference out of her own pocket. When will the Prime Minister sort this out?
It's a good one. That's a good one.
The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker,
here we go.
Clearly, every dollar spent must be spent responsibly and conscientiously, and we will do the necessary auditing.
One line. No paper. No
The
paper.
member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, Radio-Canada reveals that the RCMP has been hiring unilingual Anglophones for its bilingual senior positions. They don't speak a word of French, and they're not taking courses either. So there's no chance of these people being qualified for their positions, not today, not tomorrow. This is a flagrant violation of the Official Languages Act, and a violation so accepted in Ottawa that it's the RCMP, the police, who are getting caught breaking the law. Will the minister do something?
So the question is, all fired up.
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, if you don't mind, I'd like to congratulate you on your election as Speaker. And to answer the question, the answer is yes. Our government is always taking action to ensure that federal agencies comply with the Official Languages Act. We expect that of the RCMP. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm meeting with the RCMP Commissioner
He's a funny
tomorrow.
shade of purple,
and
right?
Clearly, I will be raising this important issue because we believe strongly in the Official Languages Act. The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île.
Heart medication, man.
Mr. Speaker,
blood pressure is a problem.
These stories of contempt for French in the federal government, since the reform of official languages, these stories are supposed to be a thing of the past. Now, Francophones are watching closely to see what this new minister is going to do. Since the reform of official languages, this is the first flagrant case of a federal agency thinking it can still ignore French in Ottawa. Will the minister prove to the entire federal apparatus that those days are over now, or will he prove that it's still okay to run roughshod over the French language?
Pretty good. That guy gets
the Honourable
going.
Minister.
Roughshod
Thank you,
over
Mr.
the French.
Speaker.
Jean-Luc,
I'd like to
beam me up.
congratulate you on your new role here in the House.
Oh, these kiss asses. Kissing the Speaker's ass.
We're celebrating the modernization of the Official Languages Act. And let's be clear, let's talk Turkey. Bilingualism is a fundamental principle of this country, of this government, and we expect the RCMP to live up to those principles and that bilingual positions be filled with bilingual candidates. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent.
This guy's another
Mr.
hot
Speaker,
top.
Hundreds of families are being affected by the housing crisis. TVA reported on a situation the other day of a woman with her 3 kids having to leave their housing to go live in a garage in a garage, Mr. Speaker, in a G7 country. It makes no sense. The woman said it was hell living there. And what's the Liberal government proposing to do? To create a new carbon tax. And even the Bloc agrees with that. Does anyone think it makes any sense to create a new tax when hundreds of thousands of Canadian families are struggling?
It's the wrong time, I'm quite sure. There's got to be other ways.
The Honourable Minister.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Speaker, let me begin by offering my congratulations and all the success.
Sean
in your
Fraser,
role.
yeah?
With respect to the honourable member's question,
Sean
I won't
Slick.
diminish the very serious challenges that families are facing across this country. In order to address Canada's national housing crisis, we're taking a number of different measures. We are investing in affordable housing in a way that no government has over the course of my entire life. In addition, in order to contribute to the ability for builders to build more homes, we're cutting taxes and changing the way that cities build homes through the Housing Accelerator Fund. When I compare our plan to theirs, you can trust that we will get more homes built, and that's been confirmed by finance officials at committee.
He's handsome, though. He's handsome.
The
And he
Honourable
speaks
Member for
well. He does.
Dufferin-Caledon.
Liberal government, the average house price has doubled. The Prime Minister wasn't me.
I don't know this guy.
After 8 years of this Liberal government, the cost of rent has doubled. This Liberal Prime Minister wasn't me. After 8 years of this Liberal government, it now takes 25 years to save for a down payment for a home. This Liberal Prime Minister wasn't me. This Liberal Prime Minister isn't worth the cost, Mr. Speaker. And if he's not responsible for anything, will he just get out of the way so Conservatives can fix what he broke?
It's a pretty good one. Pretty good, man. First timer. First timer.
Mr. Speaker, it's telling in the member's question that no ideas on how we can build more homes have been introduced by the Conservatives. With respect, we are moving forward with a plan that is cutting taxes for home builders. We are moving forward to increase the amount of money that we're going to contribute to help cities change the way that they build homes. As I have members opposite yell, we put a bill forward, let's dig in on what it actually includes. A plan to raise taxes on home builders and cut funding for home building. Mr. Speaker, that will not lead to more homes getting built. We have a plan to address the housing crisis. I hope the Conservatives join us.
Somebody should ask him where all the people went.
Once again, that only one member has the floor at the time. If you are patient to wait for your time for the question, we'll obviously allow you the opportunity to do so. And even if you look away from the Speaker, I can sort of guess where it's coming from. The Honourable Member.
Speaker's laying down the law.
Mr. Speaker, it's amazing for a government that has accomplished so little for that minister to be so proud. What he talks about is 5,000 units that are going to be built. CMHC says we need to build 3 million more units than we normally build. That 5,000 works out to 0.0016%, and he stands here bragging like he's accomplished something. But their lack of action has consequences, and they're not worth the cost. Paula from BC is 71 and retired, and she's saying she's facing a 75% increase in rent. If they actually can't do anything to fix it, will they get out of the way so our leader will fix what's broken?
Good, bud. Not too bad. Quite a few green seats in there,
The
though.
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with great respect, my honourable colleague deeply mischaracterizes both the nature of the plan and the impact that it's going to have. He's clearly only reading one sub-bullet when he's looking to the measures that will build 5,000 homes. I'd point him to the estimates that the cut on GST for apartment construction in this country would have, showing that we expect to see up to 300,000 homes built.
He is
I'd
well
point him
spoken.
to the recent change to the Canada Mortgage Bond Program, which is going to add 30,000 homes a year over the next decade, 300,000 homes. Mr. Speaker, I could continue on, but if he actually reviews the measures we have put together in their totality, he will see it dwarfs the effort they're putting forward.
Almost sounds like it's true. I
The
wonder.
Honourable Member from
I wonder.
Haldimand, Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, after 8
we
years
got?
of this Prime Minister, millions of Canadians are
Listen to
struggling
Lewis.
to pay the rent. Last month, TVA
Sure
Nouvelle
did.
reported that a single mother with 3 children was forced to abandon her mold-infested apartment and live in a garage because she cannot afford to pay the rent anymore. She described the experience as hell. This Prime Minister just is not worth the cost. What is this NDP Liberal government going to say to this single mother of
Gotta
three
get rid of the coalition
who cannot
guys.
afford to pay the rent anymore and who's descending into depression?
The NDP are as much to blame as the Liberals are. They keep
Ministre des Finances.
letting it this government sit.
What we're going to say to that single mother
putting down a
is
bill.
you cannot afford the Conservatives and their austerity that will make your life worse. What we're going to say is our government has helped to lift 2.3 million Canadians out of poverty. What we're going to say is our early learning and child care program has cut child care fees by 50% across the country already. We're down to $10 a day in 4 provinces. We will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to helping the most vulnerable.
Do you guys know about her grandfather? It's worth looking it up. Christina Freeland's grandfather.
The Member of Parliament from
Interesting.
Grand
It
Prairie,
really
Mackenzie,
is.
to please wait for his turn and to give the example to all his colleagues going forward.
Fergus, the nicest guy.
The Honourable Member from New Westminster, Burnaby.
I like the other guy too.
Another report has come out saying that the number of Canadians who are in dire financial situations is jumping dramatically. More than half of all Canadians are now living paycheck to paycheck and are overwhelmed by debt. This is a national emergency. Liberals must help Canadians who are struggling to get by. Conservatives are sure never going to help them. And Liberals need to get serious about tackling corporate greed that is jacking up prices for everyone. Canadians need a crackdown on price gouging, and they need a windfall tax on the biggest profiteers. When will Liberals finally take action?
That's a good one, man. It's a good one. Get him fired up.
L'honorable vice-premier ministre et ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, I certainly agree with the member opposite that the most vulnerable among us can expect nothing but pain and cuts from the Conservatives. I also agree with him that we need to be there to support Canadians.
The system's
That is why I was so proud to be there with my colleague, the Minister of Industry, when we said to Canada's grocers, you have to stabilize prices. We need to be there for Canadians. And that is why our government has imposed a COVID dividend on our banks and insurers to pay for the price of supporting Canadians in those difficult days.
Pearl necklace. She wore a pearl necklace.
L'honorable député de franglais là. L'honorable député de Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, young kids are going to experience the worst impacts of the climate crisis, inheriting the mess made by governments today. The Canadian Climate Institute just released a report showing Canada's emissions are going up when we desperately need them to go down. The Liberals like to talk about climate change, but they've been dragging their feet on capping oil and gas emissions, prioritizing the profits of rich CEOs over our children's future. So can the minister explain to kids who are watching why 8 years in, on this government's watch, are Canada's emissions still going up?
It's pretty cute. I don't know if it's the right thing to do. I don't know what to say about that. That's kind of funny. That's a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank my honourable colleague for her question. I would also like to remind her that Canada is the only G20 country that has eliminated fossil fuel subsidies. No one else in the G20 has done that, and we've done that 2 years earlier than all of the other G20 partners. Since 2015, we've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions, Mr. Speaker, by 53 million tons. That's the equivalent of removing from our roads 11 million gas-powered vehicles, Mr. Speaker. We're the only country in the world who's going to put a cap on the emissions of the oil and gas sector. No one else is doing this. This is how we're fighting climate change and helping Canadians with affordability. Thank you.
Is any of what he just said true? It's true, that's not bad.
Mr. Speaker, last year the people of Pakistan experienced the most devastating floods in history, wiping out the critical infrastructure. 1,739 people died, including 647 children, and additional 12,867 were injured. While Pakistan is in process of rebuilding, they have also helped house refugees fleeing Afghanistan. Can the Minister of International Development please share with this House how Canada is supporting efforts to rebuild communities in Pakistan and Afghan refugees?
They haven't been talking about the assassination that happened in British Columbia
Thank
very
you,
much.
Mr. Speaker. And before I begin, I'd like to really take the opportunity as a member of the Black Canadian community to really congratulate you for making history as Canada's first Black Canadian speaker.
It is kind of nice. It's not kind of nice, it's nice.
I want to thank the member for his important question and advocacy on a really important issue. Pakistan has faced tremendous challenges with some of the most devastating floods of the region. While they rebuild, they've also stepped up to help Afghan refugees. That's why we announced $14 million to support them, to provide health and essential services for the refugees and the host community. Canada will always be there, Mr. Speaker.
That guy seems hard to make to tease, even though he's a...
The Liberal NDP government increases the carbon
Gilbert.
tax on farmers who grow the
John
food,
Barlow.
on truckers who
Foothills.
transport it,
Nice.
on
What?
manufacturers who process it, on retailers who sell it. But oh no, these higher taxes certainly don't impact the price of food when Canadians buy it. They don't believe them. They don't believe them when 7 million Canadians are struggling to put food on the table. They don't believe them when food bank usage in Alberta is up 70%. They don't believe them when families can't put turkey on the table. How many families are going to be relying on food banks for the Thanksgiving dinner because of this Prime Minister's inflationary carbon tax?
Ooh, he's giving a hard look when he sits down. He's not a nerd, he's a tough ass, hard ass.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to remind my honourable colleague that the Poultry
I got
Association
Stephen
of
in this
Canada,
one.
the grain growers, the canola growers, have all committed to be net zero by 2050. And interestingly enough, every time this member, which I respect, stands in the House to talk about the impacts of climate change, he never talks about the impacts on farmers, the billions of dollars that droughts, flooding, pests are costing our farmers all across the country, Mr. Speaker, from coast to coast, all across the country. That we never hear about that. They have no solution to help our farmers fight climate change and help them with affordability, Mr. Speaker.
The farmers do need a lot of help. Times are changing. Farmers need some help.
Deputy de Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, here is the impact on farmers. I had a third-generation farmer from BC call me saying in 3 months they're going to lose their farm. 4 of our neighbors have already done so, and another one is selling their cows and their quota. Why? Because after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, they can't afford farm-killing carbon taxes and higher interest rates. Farmers can't afford it when diesel goes up 70 cents a litre. Farmers can't afford to pay more for feed, fuel, and higher interest rates. And Canadians certainly can't afford to pay more for food. So if they really want to defend the family farm and lower prices for Canadians, why will they not cancel their inflationary carbon tax?
Yeah, it's not bad. Not too bad. John from Foothills, huh?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the first thing I'd like to do is congratulate you on your appointment as Speaker of the House of Commons. And I thank my honourable colleague
Now we
for
have
his
an
question, but I think he
American
fully understands
politician visiting.
what's taking place with climate change. On Prince Edward Island, we had Fiona. It destroyed burns. It killed cattle. I visited Western Canada. Bales of straw at $300 a bale because of the drought. And not further away, there's floods because of climate change. Farmers fully understand the cost of climate change, and they're in the front row in order to make sure that we protect the farms and the farmland, and we'll continue to do so, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from
Do you think there should be a retirement age?
Mégantic-l'Érable, rather.
Like for roles like this? Not for like working at Walmart
Well,
or
Mr.
whatever,
Speaker,
but
after 8 years of this Liberal Prime Minister,
Like
the
that-
sad reality,
for these high-level jobs?
as described by the director of a food bank in Montreal, is that it's a real disaster. Last month, 6 families could not get food assistance. That's the first time in 37 years that we had to limit our resources.
This guy
But
runs
the
hot
Bloc
too.
Québécois doesn't seem to care. They
flip
want to apply carbon tax 2.0 to Canadian and Quebec families. Yes, the Bloc Québécois voted for carbon tax 2.0. They could have opposed it, but they instead are supporting it. If you vote for the Bloc, you're going to pay a high price. Are the Prime Minister and his partners in the Bloc proud of radically making Quebecers poorer?
Sometimes we lose some of the emotion in the translation, just because. Because he's
the
always
Honourable
fired up.
Minister, Mr. Speaker, of course, I am
Pearl
not
necklace.
Francophone or from Quebec, but I deeply respect the Quebec nation, which was the first part of our country to have a climate plan, and which clearly understands the importance of the climate and our environment. That's the reality in Quebec. Mr. Speaker, our government is here to support the most vulnerable among us throughout the country. And we are working with our colleague, the Minister for Industry, on this. The honourable member from Mégantic-l'Érable. Well, the way Liberals do things is pretty simple. The Prime Minister is making Quebecers pay a second half through the back door. It's going to make the cost of fuel go up by 20 cents a litre. On June 5th, the Bloc Québécois could have voted against the tax, but instead they joined in with the Liberals in favor of the tax. Tomorrow, the Bloc could make up for that and vote against Carbon Tax 2.0. Will the Liberals let their allies in the Liberal Bloc coalition have a free vote? Will they choose the Liberals or Quebecers in the Bloc Québécois?
These coalitions blow. There was a time. Maybe there never really was a time. Greg Fergus got to get them under control. They're out of control, Greg.
L'honorable ministre de l'Environnement et des Changements Climatiques.
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind my honourable colleague that Quebec is not only the first province in Canada to have put a price on pollution, but in fact the first jurisdiction in North America to have done so. And that has continued under a variety of governments of all stripes, except the Conservatives, who disagree with this, because their party's official position is that they don't even believe that climate change is an issue. The difference between them and us is that we believe in climate change, and we also believe in supporting Canadians during this difficult time.
It's tough,
The
because how
honourable
can you say
member
you
for
don't believe
Pierre
at all
Boucher,
in climate change?
Verchères. Thank you,
Who we
Mr.
got?
Speaker. While the
Xavier.
Conservatives keep defending oil and gas companies, we will speak for Quebec. And we know that federal businesses are still showing that they don't care about French. CN once again wants to move 50 Quebec jobs out west. Jobs in customer service, according to the union. And that's bad news for the 50 workers in Quebec who might lose their jobs. And it's also bad news for customer service in French. If CN decides to send these jobs to unilingual Anglophone provinces in the West, does the Minister of Transport think that it's safe for CN to reduce its capacity to serve Francophones?
Good question.
L'honorable ministre des Transports.
Merci.
The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to just take the opportunity to ask the Conservatives to stop beating up on the Bloc Québécois. They're already
Dozaki's
struggling.
the most interesting
Don't
man
keep
in the world.
World down. And I will say that our government will always stand up for official languages. We don't have just one in this country. There are two, English and French,
But
equal.
I drink Dozaki's.
The Honourable Member.
À l'ordre. À l'ordre.
Come on, guys, they're not listening. Give the speaker a little respect, guys. It's his first day.
À l'ordre. L'honorable député de Pierre Boucher, les...
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Thank you very much. The Minister of Transport seems to think this is a joke, but Quebecers are worried. Whenever we talk about language issues at CN, it's because it's going off the rails. In 2020, it moved a control center from Montreal to the west. And last year, they didn't have a single Francophone on its board. And now it wants to move 50 jobs from Quebec to Western Canada. And when we speak about questions of language, it's also a matter of safety. Does the minister agree with these job cuts? And does he believe that CN has to offer services in French?
Do you
yes
care
or no?
about that very much?
L'honorable ministre.
It's political. Pardon
The
me.
Honourable Minister.
It's a provincial issue.
As my colleagues in the bloc
So
know
they're
very
not supposed
well,
to do that.
Mr. Speaker,
Jean-Luc, beam me up.
this year we passed Bill C-13 on the modernization of official
Puts his
languages.
hand in his pocket.
That includes new regulations for federally regulated businesses. We will do the work to ensure that we have a Francophone presence from coast to coast to coast. That is in the regulations we will pass.
It looks ridiculous.
And CN must take decisions that respect the law and regulations.
L'honorable député de South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh,
After
no.
8 years, mortgages have doubled, rent has doubled,
It's a nice
yet this
jacket.
NDP Liberal government
Rick
is
Perkins, though. I don't know.
quadrupling carbon taxes. A report for Parliament by the Parliamentary Budget Officer on carbon taxes states that Nova Scotians will pay $1,500 more in taxes, thanks to the Atlantic Liberals who voted
He's not
23
holding the
times for these taxes.
Right.
This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. As Atlantic Canadians are getting their oil tanks filled for the fall, will the Prime Minister axe a tax so that they can afford to heat, eat, and house themselves?
maybe it's worse when they leave the paper down and they keep reading from it and they never put the head up.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, the honourable member began his question talking about some of the housing challenges that are very real. I question why he's supporting a plan that is going to raise taxes on home builders and cut funding for home building. When it comes to the environment, I'm curious why he is yet to put forward a plan that will actually do anything meaningful to reduce emissions. I'm curious, Mr. Speaker, why he aligns with a party that opposed raising taxes on the wealthiest 1% and cutting for the middle tax. Mr. Speaker, with respect on the environment, on housing, and on affordability, we have a plan, and it's on this side of the House.
He's a dancer, man. Sean Slick is a sexy
The honourable
boy.
member from Coast of Bay,
got
Central
moves.
Notre Dame.
Mr. Speaker, a recent poll in Newfoundland and Labrador showed that 84% of those surveyed
Clifford
chose the
Small, what
cost
a
of
name.
living as a top issue facing them. After many conversations with folks in my riding, this comes as no surprise. And most say the inflationary carbon tax is making life unaffordable. In the last 8 years, Atlantic Liberal MPs voted 28 times in support of carbon tax. Will these Atlantic Liberal MPs vote for our Conservative motion to axe the tax, or will they follow their master?
Guy needs some work on his acting skills.
L'honorable ministre.
Mr. Speaker, I got 75,000 masters, and they live in northern Nova Scotia, and they're telling me that they want the government to come up with a plan that's going to reduce emissions so we can protect the environment for future generations. They're telling me that they want me to stand up and support Bill C-49, which is actually going to establish an offshore energy industry in the province where we have the resource and have the ability to do the right thing for our planet and create good-paying jobs at home. I will defend good-paying jobs at home, I will defend affordability, and I won't compromise the need to protect our environment like that member.
He's on fire. Oh, did he just point? Did he just point at him? Mic drop. Mic
We're
drop
doing
for
so very well
sexy
today.
Sean Slick.
The honourable member from Coast of Bays.
Are we doing well
Central
here, Greg? Is that your
North Shore.
feedback to them?
Notre Dame, sorry. Mr. Speaker, it's
You're the
ironic
robot.
how my honourable colleague across the way references masters. I think it's time that this Liberal government realize that it's the servant, not the master. If these Atlantic Liberal MPs talk to folks in their ridings like I do, they don't need a poll to tell them what people are feeling. After 8 years, they know this Liberal Prime Minister isn't worth the cost. Common sense Conservatives have introduced yet another motion to axe the carbon tax. So I ask again, will these Atlantic Liberals support their constituents or follow their master?
Oh, it's a good delivery, though. Teasing him, but man, he's pretty. Not too bad. Get Sean up again.
Mr. Speaker, this summer I had
pearl
the privilege
necklace.
of spending some time with some of the hard-working people
Who
of
gave her that
Newfoundland
pearl
and
necklace?
Labrador. And I can tell you what they need the most. A good paying job for the incredibly skilled, incredibly hardworking people of that province, a good paying job at home. And that is what our green plan will provide. Newfoundland and Labrador is going to become the hydrogen capital of the world, the wind power capital of the world, and the clean nickel from Boise's Bay will power
hope
the
she's
Northvolt
right,
battery plant in
but I don't
Montreal.
believe her.
That's our climate.
I don't know. Maybe more than one person gave her
The
that
Honourable
pearl
Member
necklace. It
Pontiac.
could have been a couple people chipped in.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous
Sophie
peoples
Chattel.
have always been the guardians of our lands, waters, and ice.
Looks
So
like my friend's mom.
it's completely natural that they be at heart of Canada's initiatives and other countries' initiatives to protect nature and to meet our targets for conservation by 2030. Can the Minister of the Environment tell this House about the benefits that will be generated by additional investments in the Indigenous Guardian program?
What is strange about that lady? I can't figure it out.
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
What is strange about that lady?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question and for her hard work, both on reconciliation
She teed him up.
and on protecting our environment and nature. The Indigenous Guardians program is an international model. We've heard from all sorts of places around the globe to ask how this program could be reproduced elsewhere. And thanks to the investment my colleague and I announced last month, There are now Indigenous guardians in 25% of communities throughout the country, and we are hoping to make that 100%.
It's the first time I've seen that
And
move,
from
I
now
think.
on, it is the program itself that will manage itself.
L'honorable député de Lethbridge.
Thank you. They said Bill C-11 was not about censorship. They said that it was just simply about going after big tech giants, making them pay their fair share. But now new regulations were pushed through on Friday. Sneaky, sneaky. However, people are paying attention, and Canadians are aware that, in fact, their voices are being censored. A podcast registry. Innovative, hey? Now, when it comes to attacking freedom, this government just can't help itself. They are absolutely committed to censoring what we can see, what we can say, and what we can hear online. Now, why is this government, just curious, so hell-bent on censoring people's freedom of speech?
Not bad. Good for you. Rachel.
L'honorable ministre du patrimoine canadien.
Mr. Speaker, it's simply false. What the
She
bill
had very
doesn't
little
do
to say before.
is regulate users or people that produce podcasts.
Exactly.
What the bill does is make sure that tech giants pay their fair share, such as Apple, Spotify, Netflix. What it does is support our Canadian creators, and what it does is making sure that Canadian stories are heard and that our creators have a voice online. Instead of kneeling in front of tech billionaires, the leader of the Conservatives should stand up for our artists and our creative sector.
If what she's saying is true, that would be nice for the content creators across the country.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lobinière.
Think it's true?
Congratulations on your speakership,
Jacques
Mr.
Gourde.
Speaker. After 8 years of this
gets
Liberal
going, too.
government, we see it trying to control freedom of expression in Canada.
Always
Too
speaks
much
French,
power to
though.
the CRTC, which will limit Canadians' ability to share what they think on social media.
He's a good reader.
This government is going too
fired
far
up, though.
and going much too hard when it comes to limiting freedom of speech. If this is not liberal control, Mr. Speaker, then what is it?
Subdued today. Yesterday or Friday, he was going off a little bit
The Honourable Minister of Heritage.
in her
Mr.
bathrobe.
Speaker, this is simply false.
No pearl necklace.
This
Christina Freeland
legislation
got
does not
all the
limit
pearl
users
necklaces.
or people who produce podcasts. What it does do is ensure that web giants like Apple, Spotify, or Netflix will have to pay their fair share here in Canada. It also ensures that we are adequately
You're not reading the
supporting
sheet,
our
put it
Canadian
down.
creators
No.
and ensuring that they have a voice online.
They need PR training.
Instead of catering to these web giants, the leader of the Conservatives should help our Canadian creators.
L'honorable député de Banff-Airdrie.
Canadian veterans have spent their lives serving and
Richards.
sacrificing for our freedoms, and they were left to watch in horror
Nice
as a
tie,
Nazi
bud.
soldier was recognized in this House. When veterans ask for basic
time.
care, the Prime Minister tells them they're asking for more than he can give. And now he would have veterans believe that basic vetting for Nazis is also asking more than he can give. So when will this Prime Minister finally take accountability and apologize to veterans?
They hadn't mentioned that yet today, I don't think. They must have forgot because
Avant qu'on
Catherine
procède à
Gould's not in the house to put us
Before
to
going to
sleep.
the minister's answer, I
right.
would just like to remind the member for New Westminster Burnaby to leave
Happy-looking
space
guy,
for people
though.
asking their questions.
$85,000 a raise, I think, something like that, around 100,000. Beam me up, Luke. Beam me up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a former page and as a former page yourself, I would like to congratulate you for your new appointment and also welcome the new cohort of pagers that I think we haven't sufficiently saluted and thanked very hard for their hard work. Mr. President,
Congratulations. It is nice.
the former speaker
They seem
has
to
made
like
it very clear that he alone was responsible for inviting this individual to the House and recognizing him. It was his initiative and no other parliamentarians were involved.
How could you possibly need a sheet for that sad-ass apology,
L'honorable
man?
député
Come on,
de
Jean-Luc.
St. John's Est.
Sunday marked National Seniors Day, an occasion for Canadians to
That's a
celebrate the profound contribution of seniors
cool
in
color
our
of hair.
homes, our communities, and our
Her hair looks
workplaces.
great.
However, for some, the rising cost of living is making it more difficult to
No
make
pearl
ends
necklace.
meet. Can the Minister of Seniors please share with our government, please share how our government is ensuring that all seniors can enjoy a secure and dignified retirement?
So far today, only.
Mr. Speaker, and if I could just add my congratulations to somebody who's known you for 35 years. Since we were young students at Forum for Young Canadians, we always knew you'd go places. And indeed you did. And while it's a few years off for you and I, it is good to know that we raised old age security by 10% for seniors, 75 and older. We raised the guaranteed income supplement by up to $947 annually for single low-income seniors. We launched the Age Well at Home initiative to help more seniors age in their homes and their communities. Our work is far from done, but as Minister for Seniors, my priority remains affordability, affordability, and affordability.
All right. This is just my second week of doing this. I didn't know that he left television and got into politics, so that's interesting to see.
Vancouver, Kingsway.
Well, Mr. Speaker, speaking of affordability, Canadians have seen
Don
what
Davis.
happens when Loblaws is left unchecked, price fixing and gouging. Now, Galen Weston is turning his sights on health.
How do you feel about Galen Weston?
Shoppers Drug Mart's private clinics. Experts are warning that huge corporations put profits before patients. It's government's job to prevent this. What is the Liberal plan to ensure rich CEOs like Galen Weston don't gouge Canadians for health care like they do with food?
All right, guys, he's trashing Galen Weston. We can't get up for that a little bit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and let me add my voice in congratulating you. It's wonderful to see you in that role, and I'll say to my honourable colleague that the ensuring that our public health care system remains public and that it is centred in making sure that everybody who needs health care is provided it, regardless of their circumstance, is at the core of everything that we do. And we've taken historic action on reducing drug prices. We're going to continue that. In fact, when you look at the Pan-Canadian Pricing Alliance, we've been able to see almost $3.5 billion in savings for Canadians in reducing drug costs. We've taken historic action on patent drugs and other things.
Have them all on individual
Mr. Speaker,
mics.
Monday was the 5th anniversary of the brutal murder of Jamal Khashoggi by Saudi officials, yet Liberals stayed silent. And no wonder. Under this government, arms have continued to flow to Saudi Arabia. Despite the war in Yemen, despite serious human rights violations, and despite the murders of hundreds of Ethiopian migrants. Canadians need to know that their government is not complicit in human rights abuses. Does this minister even know if Canadian-made sniper rifles were used by the Saudis against Ethiopian asylum seekers? Does the minister have any idea where
It's a good question. We lost her on the mic, but it's a good question. Is that true, any of what you said? Some of the things they say, I don't know how to tell if they're true.
I would like to thank my colleague for an important question. I would like also to congratulate you. Félicitations, mon cher ami. Ça me fait plaisir de te voir.
Congratulations, my dear friend. I'm so happy to see you in that chair.
To answer my colleague's question, of course, we will always abide by a strong arms export treaty where we respect human rights. We will always make sure that that's the case and that end users also
They don't
are
touch on the
taking into
question,
account.
though.
And I look forward to working with her on this very issue. Thanks.
You should answer.
And that brings to a close oral questions today.
All right, guys. Oh, question. So that's great. You know, they're applauding the speaker. Everybody, it's good. New speaker, they seem excited. I like the other guy, but
all members
he might have screwed up on that Nazi thing. It looks like he did.
President get settled in a little bit with this new car. No dents.
No dents. Point of order. Get a point of order.
All right, guys. So, yeah. It's interesting. Interesting show. I only noticed one person that had a pearl necklace, and it was Christina Freeland. And got to recognize some new faces, whatever. I'm guessing that a lot of people were in on giving her that pearl necklace because it looks expensive. Looks like it might have taken a few extra hands. Anyhow, guys, we'll be back tomorrow. Like, subscribe. My name's Aaron. We're covering, as you've just seen, question periods daily. We'll be covering those and doing a little bit of commentary, trying to add a little bit of humor and maybe insight along the way. If you have tips or comments or suggestions or negative feedback, positive feedback, do it here. Any of your thoughts, please share. And if you know somebody that might be interested in watching something like this, please flip them a copy. Let them know. All right, guys, have a good evening, and we'll catch you next time. It's been fun. We're out. Have a good evening, gang.